Hello, my name is Carolina. I am an English as a foreign language teacher. I'm also a literature student, but for now, I'm going to focus on the literature part of the whole equation. So, I was thinking that in literature, we usually look in Hispanic literature classes. We see English literature, but I don't think that there's like reciprocity there with people who are English speakers reading things in Spanish or material in Spanish. So I decided that I was going to make this video to show certain stories that I think that are very valuable to Mexico's culture. And I also wanted to emphasize the importance of language because when some people, I'm just speaking generally, when some people speak of Spanish, they tend to make this hierarchy of European Spanish, and then all of the other Spanishes below. And I mean Spanishes because I mean the dialects of Spanish, you know, the ones that you can find in Latin America. So I have found this love for literature in Spanish. I love Mexico and many of the things that the culture has to bring. A lot of people think that cocoa is like the most representative thing of Mexico, right? But I don't mean it in a derogatory sense. In fact, it's actually quite a good movie. But what I mean is that there is more to our culture and there is more to our literature as well. So let's begin with a story called El Juramento. El Juramento by Eduardo Antonio Parra. Actually, he is a Mexican author who's well known for the literature of the north of Mexico, which, you know, you can speak about literatures, which is great, and genres, if you will, but sometimes we focus so much on the genres, on categorizing the literature, that sometimes we don't experience it. Well, in any case, I'm not going to tell you the story plot. Instead, I'm going to show you what I deem to be the most valuable thing of the story. And that is, it uses this extended metaphor that is fed by a motif, a water motif. If you don't know what a motif is, you can think about it like things that, like metaphors or things that have ideas in common. For example, water, rain, drops, and you know, they have a certain line that you can follow. In any case, this author uses the metaphors like the regular metaphors within, you know, the ones that usually appear in language, and he creates meaning from the combination of all these metaphors. So it's a bit more complex than just saying, this is what happens in the story. So I'll just give you a premise of what happens in the story, which is this little boy. Oh, what happened? Sorry. Okay, so these boys make a blood pact and promising that they're going to do anything to, okay, so it's going to be a really weird translation, but to do anything to pretty much fuck up people in the United States. They call them gringos. So it's not don't take it personally. Okay, it's more of internalized hatred, I think. But that's not a problem. Don't feel attacked personally, because it's just part of the whole world that is created within the story. It's just the characters feel that way. Okay. If you look into it, it can get pretty messy. But in any case, these kids make this blood pact, and one of them does not go through with it. In fact, this boy goes to live to the United States, and when he comes back, his little gang goes for him and actually have some sort of trial where they decide if he should live or not. Well, in any case, the plot is really interesting, but what I really, really loved about this story is the river and how it becomes like a myth. a myth that has to do with death. But in fact, I'm going to read you, that's why it's in blue, I'm going to read you the parts that describes the actual Rio Bravo, which is the river that separates Mexico from the United States in the Laredo area. So the border. Well, actually, the river serves as a border, which is also very significant. But okay, let me read this to you. Era mágico. Al contacto con la lluvia, el fondo liberaba su fuerza oculta. Los remolinos afloraban en la superficie, surgían las ráfagas entre las piedras. Son los muertos, le había dicho su padre durante una tormenta en la isleta. Las ánimas de los difuntos ahogados en estas aguas traidoras. Por eso el río maldito pudre todo lo que está cerca. No hay otro río en el mundo donde se ahoguen más cristianos que en este. Por eso, de cuando en cuando salen a gritar su rabia a los vivos. José Antonio recordó la cantidad de cuerpos que había visto sacar desde niño y pensó que acaso su padre no mentía. So, if you know Spanish, great. Then you're going to understand this perfectly. I hope that if you're learning Spanish, you actually try to read this book in this story. This is actually a short story in Spanish because it is really good. But there is no shame in looking for translations. Yes, sometimes there is a huge difference between the translator, what the translator understood and what you're actually getting, okay? Because the translator has to read the book, internalize it, and then find language in the meta language in the target language, and then recreate the whole story in those words. And that is very difficult. So please appreciate the work of your translator, because he or she creates this bridge between the two worlds. And well, the quality of the bridge is another story, but you should really appreciate the work that goes into translation. In any case, going back to the story, it describes the river in very interesting ways. First of all, it says that it was magical. That it was magical. And then it starts describing the river with force and starts talking about the dead and how there had been so many people who had been drowned in those waters because the river, damned river, putrefies everything that it is close to it. So it also says that there's no other river in the world where more Christians drown than in this one specifically. So the thing is that there's some sort of myth behind the river and the whole story of the dead people in it. Actually, I wanted to show you another very descriptive part of the story that has to do with the description of the river. Here it is. It says, había llegado al río. Un chorro de luz iluminaba desde el otro lado. Pinche migra, dijo. Y tras un ascenso de tos, hundió la cabeza en el agua. Los ruidos acuáticos en la superficie se confundían con un coro de voces conocidas que lo animaban a deslizarse hasta el centro de la corriente. But here, what I think is the most important part is, again, this is a description of the river, but the most important part is I can't, I'm having difficulty trying to explain this. I just find it so fascinating. And here they're talking about the aquatic sounds of the surface and how you could hear those sounds that the water makes, and those sounds are the choir of voices trying to reel them in, like trying to reel the person into the river. So the river is continuously described kind of like a cemetery of souls that is trying to reel you in to the river, to your death. But in this story, the river is not like the villain. It's not gratuitous that it's trying to do that. It only does it with people who have committed treason. And the whole story in El Juramento is about treason. So you should try it out. I don't know. I'll give you other options, but this is one of my favorite ones. So if you want to read El Juramento, you're going to have to find Los Límites de la Noche, because that's the book by Parra, the author I mentioned before. And he has like a recompilation of different short stories in there. You can also find it. You can also find it online. If you want, you can send me a message and I'll, send it to you. But I'm not quite sure how it works with copyright and such. So I'd rather not like post it here or, let's just, if you want it, send me a message. We also have another story that, in fact, I will show you through the link, through the website. Give me one moment. Here it is. All right, so this story is called Sombra, entre sombras, de Ines Arredondo. In fact, Ines Arredondo, she's the author. She's very famous here in Mexico. She's from like the 60s, and a lot of ideas of womanhood and femininity that she handles or that she talks about within her stories. I find them very interesting. I keep saying very interesting, fascinating, but that's how I actually feel. In any case, this story is about a woman who gets married very young and questions her innocence. In fact, it starts with, antes de conocer a Samuel, era una mujer inocente, pero pura. There's like, before I met Samuel, I was an innocent woman, but pure. So the whole story, she talks about her most abject and wishes and desires, and how she actually becomes, or she has this love triangle with her husband and her lover. But the interesting thing about this is, in fact, the way that she perceives herself in the, not Ines Arredondo, because you have to remember that the author is not the same as the character. Sometimes the author can't speak through the characters, but in literature it's not as direct as that. In any case, it is very important to note this, because some people don't really see the relationship between the reality in our real world and the reality within the fiction, which we call reality in other ways as well. But it's the fiction within the actual story that can cause a lot of problems. So I am letting you know now. All right. Well, back to the story. Okay, so I wanted to show this excerpt of the story because I wanted to show one of the things that she uses to portray this femininity. And the thing is that anything that has to do with sexuality sometimes can be portrayed as negative. Here, yes, the actual character portrays it as negative, but not in the way that we usually would. In any case, this part is the, how can I put it? This is the first sexual encounter that she has with her new husband, Emilio. So what happens is she's very nervous and she doesn't know what to do. She's actually scared. She's just scared, but it's very peculiar because she just lets things be in this part. Okay, so it says here, no tuve que esperar. La sábana fue bajando muy lentamente y sentí que por mis cabellos, por mi cara, capullos frescos y olorosos me habían cubierto. Iban cubriendo. Eran azares. La sábana siguió bajando hasta que todo mi cuerpo estuvo cubierto por aquellas flores. Una embriaguez dulcísima se extendió por todos mis miembros. Hermilio comenzó a besar las flores, una por una, y yo no sentí sus labios sobre mi piel. Cubierta de frescura y perfume, lo dejé que besara una a una las abiertas flores del limonero, y como ellas, me abrí. So, this is actually a very beautiful picture because it's describing the sheet that is on top of her and how her husband removes it slowly and then throws flowers on top of her and then starts kissing each one of her of the flowers that is on top of her body, and she describes herself as being opened by those kisses. This is actually very interesting because she doesn't love her husband. She married him because of the commodities that he could provide her, but that's the interesting thing. She enjoys that part of herself, and this could become a problem later on in the story. So that's why I'm showing you this. I'm not saying that sexuality is something bad, and then necessarily, of course, it is not. I'm just saying that in the story, again, in the story, the character thinks about her sexuality in a certain way that she feels bad about herself. In fact, there's another part where she starts to have like threesomes and such with her husband and the other lover, and well, uh, some people might be uncomfortable with it. If you don't really want to read something like that, I'm warning you now. Then don't read the story. But it is a very interesting story. So try it out. Now on to our next story is El Huesped, which is The Host by Amparo Davila. In any case, this story is actually very interesting because it is a host. It's this entity that goes into her house because her husband invited him, and she's deadly scared of it, and it keeps on taunting her and threatening her within her own house. It's very symbolic. Um, I'm sure there is an English translation. You can read the translation, but I really challenge you to try to read it in Spanish because it is a great story, and a lot of the times in the translation we do miss certain experiences that we could have with the language. If you can't read it, you try to see it first, and if you think that no, I won't be able to read this, then read the translation. That's my only advice. So you can work towards it eventually, keep it stored somewhere and then think, I think I'm ready to read it now. So when it comes to language, you have to know your own limits and you have to challenge those limits. So that's why I'm trying to make this recommendation. Okay, so the story, The Host, is very interesting. It's actually quite simple when it comes to the language that it uses. And if you don't know what something means, you can easily stop and then research it. It is a short story, and it is in first person, and the lady in the story is explaining what is happening. Okay, so here's the excerpt that I want to show you. And here she starts introducing her relationship with her husband, and the sad thing is that he doesn't really pay attention to her. Actually, she says here that they were married for 3 years. Llevamos entonces cerca de 3 años de matrimonio y teníamos 2 niños y yo no era feliz. We had 2 children and I wasn't happy. So poor one, frankly. But it was a different time. So you also have to think about the time when you do the analysis in your story. And I don't mean analysis as in just to make this into a literary expert type of thing or an expose, write an essay about it. You really have to enjoy the language. You have to enjoy the stories. Otherwise, there's no reason for you to do this. Sometimes we overvalue literature, and I don't mean that as in that literature does not have value, but sometimes we make it into this really huge thing that is untouchable. And it really shouldn't be that way. When we talk about literature, the fun thing is you have your own experience with the reading, whatever it is, a short story, a book, a play, even a movie. You have to experience it and then share the experience with other people. When you imagine someone reading, you imagine someone doing it alone. The actual physical process of reading. You're in a corner, on a sofa, reading to yourself. In fact, reading used to be done aloud, and shared. But I guess we have changed that way. I think we should go back to it, but it just depends, you know? People are going to do whatever they want. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Okay, so the thing about the story, back to the story, I started getting into literature. The thing with the story is that you have to think about it critically. It's not only what the character tells you or the narrator feeds you. You have to think for yourself. And that's one of the things that literature does for you. It helps you think for yourself. Okay, so here, where is it? Okay, so she starts talking about how they live in a small town and it's very distant from the city, and that the town is kind of like dead. Okay, so she's really scared in her house, not only her town, but in her house, because she has this host that her husband brought in. The thing is that this seems to be a supernatural being that keeps stalking her. So she keeps telling her husband, no, please, no, take him away. And then here, this is the response of the husband. Es completamente inofensivo. He's harmless. Te acostumbrarás a su compañía. You'll get used to its company. And if you don't, y si no lo consigues, like if you can't do it, it's just the whole relationship between her and her husband is so sad. But the good thing about the story is that at the end, she stands up for herself, not to her husband, but if you read it, you'll see. I hope you actually do read the story. Amparo Davila is a very, very good author. This is one of the simplest stories that you can find, and I don't mean simple in a bad way again. And I'm doing a good way, as in I think you'll be able to understand it if you don't know Spanish. So try it out. Okay, so now back to my face again. The thing is that the thing that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help you expand what you think literature is, if you don't already have this expanded vision of what it is. There is a definition, not one, but many definitions of literature. And as the literature changes, as more literature is created, the idea of literature it keeps changing as well. Literature is very much in tune with knowledge. So with the theory of knowledge and literature is art and the law of language. And then you have to understand how language works within the community, but you also have to know how language works within the literature realm, okay, because they follow different codes. There are like dictionaries for symbols and literary and figurative language, so try them out if you don't know how it works. But now let's go into something a bit more fun, I guess. If you're not very much into reading, you can actually watch a series called Diablo, Guardían. This is actually a novel by Xavier Velasco. It was made into a series. It was made into a series. I liked it. I very much liked it. Here, I want to show you. This is the cover of the actual book, and this is the cover that is used for the series version. Look at this woman. She's gorgeous. That's one of the things that I like about it. It's that the aesthetic vision of a woman is actually, portrayed differently than how it's usually portrayed in the media. Okay, so this woman is, well, she starts off as a young girl, and she has this idea of going to New York, living in New York, and she wants to buy herself things. She wants to live in the most expensive hotel. She wants to have a very, very rich life. That's her dream. But the thing is that she starts having some problems after she goes to New York, because she steals money from her parents and goes to New York. And well, I'd rather not tell you the story, but what I do want to say is it's definitely worthy of reading, since the narrative structure in the novel is interesting. It goes between a past and the now, and so she keeps talking to Pig, which is the author, not the author, I'm sorry, the character, that she has these like taped recordings, and she gives them to him, trying to explain her whole story and why she's the way that she is. Kind of like in the series, the reason why she does this is she kind of like wants to immortalize herself through the language, which is interesting as well. This is in Amazon Prime. If you don't want to read the novel, at least watch the series. It is very interesting. Again, there are some parts that are very sexualized. This, I guess, would be rated R, or I don't know. I don't really know how that works, but there are some parts that are very sexualized. So be careful with that. I'm warning you now. Again, sexuality is not a bad thing. On the contrary, but some people can see it as a taboo. So I'm letting you know now so I don't get in trouble later. Okay, so I don't want to tell you what happens in the story, so you have a chance to go into it and have your own experience with the short stories, the novel, the series. I'm just telling you a few of the things that could make you interested in it. The series that is in Amazon Prime is in Spanish as well. So the good thing is that you can have the subtitles and such for some help if you need it. Okay, so now I want to show you this play. Okay, this is not a Mexican play, but it does have something to do with Mexico. It's called Fade by Tanya Saracho. I'm not really sure how she wants to pronounce her name, because she does live in the United States, and you know, the name of a person is something very important, so pronounce it as I can for now. So Fade is a play that you can get through, give me one second, through Abbott. Okay, you do have to go into the website and buy the play, you know, the script. And the script is very interesting because it's narrated in a way that if you read it, you have an experience with it, you know, with the reading. But if you watch the play, if you actually go to the play, you won't be able to see certain, you know, notes that the author put in there. You actually have to see it through the actors, and acting also has its difficulties because you have to make a lot of choices. So I do want to show you how to get to it. So if you just find Fade by Tanya Saracho, you can see it right there. Abbott, after you buy it, it's like $9, something like that. And then you have the little app that it comes with. I want to show you scene 3 because I don't want to show you the whole play. So you have the opportunity of actually looking at it, but I want to show you the importance of language. Okay, so this is English and Spanish. I do need to tell you kind of like the context of what is going on here so you understand it a bit more. Lucia is this girl who just started, this woman who just started working at this office where they write the scripts for a TV show. That's pretty much the premise. And she becomes friends slowly, okay, because there's first there's like it's a weird tango between them because she likes him in a friendly way, I mean, and she wants to kind of like talk to him, but he doesn't want to talk to her because of this. You'll see the language has to do a lot with how the society is structured. So okay, so scene 3. Lucia is on the couch holding a binder and some pages crying. Abel comes in, earbuds firmly placed in his ears, but when he sees Lucia in an obvious emo state, he immediately starts to leave. Lucia, no, pásale. No, come in. Taking off his earbuds. Huh? Que le pases? I said, come in. She points to the trash can, which is overflowing with balled up papers, her eyes still on the script. She's been studying, even when she stands. Date vuelo, es pura mierda. Go crazy, it's all shit. Lucia reaches at the shelf for a Kleenex when the whole thing comes tumbling down again. This makes her start bawling again. Abel's like, great, this bitch is a mess. Feeling toda sorry for herself. Fuck my life. Abel, well, those shelves aren't too sturdy. They keep putting them up and taking them down, so of course they're going to be loose. Lucia's head shoots up, a pause. She stares at Abel as if she's looking at him for the first time. You speak English? Yup. Pause. So why have I been speaking to you in Spanish? I don't know. Abel starts fixing the shelves. Why did I do that? I couldn't tell you. Sorry. That's okay. You know how sometimes you go on autopilot? No. Like, you know, when you assume? I don't assume stuff like that. Oh, B. I guess I do, which I didn't even know I did. Abel starts to go. Then Lucia, so fucking needy. People don't like it here, right? Like in LA? I don't know. Yeah, they don't like Mexicans don't like it here. I was at this restaurant the other day by myself, like a total loser because well, I know zero people in this town. So my waitress was taking my order, and to me it's obvious the Spanish is her first language, right? Her accent was just well of a person who'd be more comfortable in Spanish. So she's taking my order and I'm like, "Me puedes traer agua, por favor?" And she shoots all this shade and all this attitude and she refuses to answer me in Spanish. I'm like here thinking it's obvious you speak Spanish. Why are you playing this little game? I'm trying to make it easy for you. Just ridiculous. Abel, sometimes they don't let you speak it at work. Oh, well, I guess that's true, but she'd rather struggle with her broken English and answer me in Spanish when it's obviously easier for her. Sorry, but what do you mean it was obvious? What was obvious? You said you spoke Spanish to her because it was obvious that she spoke Spanish. What does that mean? Like she looked like she spoke Spanish, like I look. Okay, well, I guess I'll stop here, but I got carried away and read a bit more than I needed. I do want to show you the parts with the notes, you know, between the parentheses. This is the first time that I see it using this kind of language. Like the notes tell you that the attitude's like, great, this bitch is a mess. Like it describes you in a very, I don't mean to be rude, but in a very millennial way. I I don't know if I could describe. I wish I had a better word for it, but in any case, you can see what the language means in their reality, like in their culture. So she assumes that the person speaks Spanish, and she doesn't even know she's being racist. So be careful. Maybe this can help you if you're being accidentally racist towards Mexican people. Um, it happens, you know. I guess even people here in Mexico do make mistakes in that, like that, there and here. So we all have our our ideas, but I don't mean in a bad way again. Uh, we all have certain relationships with language, and we do have to. Um, so it's just a matter of being in tune with the other people around us and um, being very empathetic with the things that could make them uncomfortable or not. You know, we all have our insecurities, and it's not just insecurities that we make up ourselves. Is there insecurities that we get from the environments that we're in. So they are valid. We and people who suffer these discriminations, we do really go through a horrible process. Um, Again, we all have our different levels of privilege and such, and it's important to be again empathetic, you know, to be in tune with other people. So not only to avoid insulting them, but also to make them feel comfortable and appreciated. And with literature, it's not just the play that you're analyzing, you're looking at art, something very social. So one of the things that I really do recommend is it's not only looking at literature as a book, as the actual process of mechanical process of doing something. You do have to go into it. You have to have a critical analysis of it, critical thinking that can really help you with everyday life, actually. But I do, I do think that you'll love these stories. And if you have trouble finding them, please let me know. If you want to share your experience with it with me, I'm totally down for that. But I do really wish that you enjoy it. So thank you very much for watching until now, or if you stopped at any point. But if I'm thanking you now and you stopped then, it doesn't it mean that you didn't get to see my thank you? Okay, overthinking it. So again, thank you very much. These are wonderful stories by wonderful authors. And actually, now that I think about it, all of them are women. So we have two women authors, three women authors, and then two male authors. We have plays, or one play. We have a novel that was turned into a series, and then we have those three short stories. So I hope you really enjoy them. Thank you very much. Sorry for taking so much of your time. Bye.